Mr. Chairman, good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm privileged to be able to share some thoughts with you today, but first I thought I'd start by congratulating the organisers for having the foresight and the vision to set the theme around the subject life in an uncertain world. I remember a year ago when Brian visited my office and told me that this event was coming to Hong Kong and would like to speak to it, and the discussion was around what are we going to talk about, what's the theme. At that time I think the Hang Seng Index was breaking through 30,000 and seemed to be going forever upwards. Everything seemed very rosy. I don't think that the Institute could have fully grasped the position that we're in today and how life has become certainly very uncertain. But even putting aside the extraordinary events in the global capital and financial markets, I truly doubt that the future of our industry has ever been more uncertain. Now, with the added complexity of substantial global recession and troubled capital market, every business plan on this planet has to be revised. I don't think there's anybody in this room who really lived through the last event of this magnitude, who really understood it. I don't think any of us really understand what's coming. This will pose new challenges and new requirements of all of us. We will need to revisit our most basic and fundamental assumptions, and we'll have to retest them, and we'll have to open them up for critical examination. If we do not, we risk other people taking decisions for us. For instance, the equity and capital providers who supply us with the enormous amounts of money that we plough into this industry every year, and we need their money for future investment in the industry, may lose their appetite towards financing us, or may simply not be able to finance us. Worse still, if we don't understand our market, we may miss the reality of the new uncertain world ahead of us, and we may miss the market completely. Yes, this is a time to take stock, and it may be grim, but it need not be the end of the world. So let me comment how we at PCCW, as an operator, strategise to respond to the changing consumer needs and the changing business environment. To us, the logical starting point in any market is to ask some very basic questions. For example, what are the consumer needs? And how can we anticipate these needs? And how do we develop services to meet these needs? Given that this industry has long lead times between a thought and actually rolling out the service. Over the period of the last few years, this line of inquiry has led us to understand that consumers have fundamentally shifted from a simple, discrete, silo, single line of business requirement from us as operators. For instance, voice was voice, IDD was IDD, fax was fax, and that's what we provided. Consumers have moved to a need for ubiquitous access to information, entertainment, applications, and transactional services. This has led us to develop our quadruple play, or as we call it, quad play capabilities here in Hong Kong, which allows us to develop the same content and the same services as appropriate on 4 platforms: our traditional fixed line business, our broadband business, TV and mobile. In order to achieve this, we needed to invest heavily to put in place a multi-platform delivery service that can be accessed by the consumer anytime, anywhere, via both fixed access technologies and not one but a variety of wireless access technologies. And these services are delivered to the customer on a wide range of devices, or as we call them, screens, with screens as big as this traditional sort of TV set or as small as a mobile phone. Now, as many of you will know, my company started as a traditional telco with a monopoly position. Many things have forced us to change. Of course, liberalisation of the market and fierce competition in the market has been a large part of the change process. And many of you would agree and if you've heard some statistics just a while ago, that Hong Kong is one of the most, if not the most competitive and challenging telecoms markets in the world. But technology has been a huge factor in our change process. Relentless technological advance has radically altered the functionality and the capabilities that we can deliver to our customers, but has also radically reduced the lifespan of our investments. I remember once we used to, as engineers, we'd plan for a 20-25-year network changeover. We bought telephone exchange equipment expecting 20-25 years depreciation life. And at least that much in economic life, and sometimes more with the old Strowger switches. Today, we have to depreciate most of our investments in a mere 5 to 10 years, and our set-top boxes in 3 to 4 years. This means that we have to get our, quote, rate of return on capital employed over a shorter time frame, and that can be very difficult when market prices are not factoring in the need for operators to replenish the capital stock. And to put a figure on it, PCCW historically invests about $400 million per annum right here in this city, each and every year. That's a huge amount to invest in any one city, and I don't see that number falling any day soon. As we've invested more and more and more in our network, we have built bigger and fatter conduits to our customers. Many of you may be surprised to know that PCCW alone has installed enough fibre in Hong Kong that if we could string it together as one continuous strand, it would wrap around the equator not once, but over 27 times. Right? This fat pipe capacity means we can provide a true broadband experience of at least 3 megabits per second to over 95% of Hong Kong consumers. And in fact, we are able to sell a 1 gigabit fibre to the home service, a true fibre into your house, to the majority of our customers. And in fact, we sell that service. Installing fat pipes is one of our core business interests, and clearly we are proud that we do such a good job of it. And in the process, we support Hong Kong's position as a world city and a global financial centre. However, as we set about installing these fat pipes, we couldn't help, it was inevitable that we'd have to ask ourselves the question, but what are people going to do with these pipes? And progressively that's taken us into the range of content services and applications. And being a provider of a very wide range of service, including music, shopping, TV, HD TV, production of news and sports channels, cinema ticketing, in fact any sort of ticketing, food ordering, and the list goes on and on. I'm sure when the market was opened up to competition in 1995, the CEO of Hong Kong Telecom could not have imagined that we would be selling pizzas on an interactive TV service. Yet it is service innovation like this that has become a large part of my job as CEO today, as is the production of our own news, sport and entertainment channels. And yes, we really do sell pizzas or Thai food or Vietnamese food, and we do really make our own TV channels. I'd encourage those of you who are visitors to Hong Kong to try out our services, because seeing is believing. If I am to make any forecast here today with confidence, it is that we have grown strongly because of our telco roots, but we will grow ever further away from them in the future. The result of our journey over the past decade or so is clear. What used to be a provider of traditional fixed line services has evolved into a more entrepreneurial and fleet-of-foot integrated service provider, bringing together the traditionally separate areas of telecoms, broadcasting and IT into the one company. Now, in this evolution, we did have certain strengths. These included an extensive network with significant sunk investment. We've always had excellent back-office capabilities, and we've always paid attention to customer care and service quality. We've had effective sales networks and channels, and a large customer base. We've also had substantial cash flows and a willingness and a desire to continue to invest further. Importantly, we also had, and we still have, a determination to innovate. And lastly, and not unimportantly, we've always had a firm belief in the future of this industry and our ability to participate effectively, notwithstanding the uncertainties thrown upon us through market liberalisation. Let me now just say a few words on policy and regulation. Of course, our industry has been heavily regulated in the past, and of course there will remain a need for regulation in the future, particularly around content regulation and competition policies. But just as the industry has changed dramatically very quickly, we need to ensure that our policies and regulations remain relevant and, as necessary, also evolve and change appropriately in tune with market needs. Personally, I think that Hong Kong's particular mix of policies and regulation have served the city very well to date. I should think that this is a commonly held view, and I'm sure other speakers will speak on this subject, so I need not dwell on it, other than to point out that if you take a range of objective measures, such as teledensity, the penetration of broadband, mobile and pay TV, if you look at Wi-Fi coverage, if you look at the extent of innovation, and if you look at the very low prices to consumers, yet the very high quality in those services, I think you'd agree with me that Hong Kong does rate as world-class. So on these objective measures, we can say that Hong Kong has shown that a liberalised market does bring considerable benefits to the consumer and to the economy as a whole. But I might add at this point a cautionary point, and that while the consumer and the economy have done very well out of this process, there may be a question mark whether this has been at excessive cost to the service providers and their shareholders, a point I might return to later. Looking back on Hong Kong's experience and success with liberalisation, there are valid lessons to share with all other jurisdictions travelling down the liberalisation path. Likewise, I would venture on the so-called convergence issues. Now, Hong Kong does have its own unique environment. I mean, where else would you have a conference like this on the 56th floor, right? But Hong Kong has also historically tended to be a pioneer of many aspects of this industry, whether it be in policy or in regulation or in technology development or the commercial rollout of new services. This does make Hong Kong a very interesting place to live and work. But it's also, for many of you from outside of Hong Kong, an interesting place to watch and observe, as it may offer a peep into the future. So what might be some of the salient points coming out of our experience with liberalisation? I would say in this market we are now entering a much more mature phase of the industry's development. After the initial euphoria and exuberance of the first rush of competition when the market was first opened up, we've seen reality checks and we've seen some casualties. Over recent years we've experienced favourable capital markets, and that has allowed new entrants to have ready access to both cheap equity and cheap debt. And as a result, we have seen some competitors survive and establish themselves and install a lot of infrastructure. And of course, we've also seen the incumbent reform itself and become an effective competitor too. We've also seen that the survivors have tended to be facilities-based operators, whereas service-based or resale providers have tended to exit the market. Now in this maturing phase, we are seeing the industry operating as most other sectors of the economy. Entry and exit are relatively free, and the market is naturally finding an equilibrium point where there will be fewer players, yet real competition is sustained. Also, a better balance should emerge between consumer benefits such as choice and price competition and innovation on the one hand, yet hopefully a respectable rate of return to the shareholders of the operators on the other. The market does need to find a natural balance because the fundamentals of this industry are founded on large-scale investments that require deep pockets. There are substantial economies of scale and scope at work in this industry, and in industries that have characteristics such as this, the market structure will naturally gravitate towards a smaller number of players, each of which is well-resourced and able to invest with confidence, no matter how choppy or how uncertain the prevailing economic circumstances. It is the nature of this industry is that there will always be another technological development. There will always be another investment cycle. It is a truism because of technological change. We will always need to invest for each new technological innovation, and all operators that aim to survive, whether new entrants or established operators, rarely have the luxury of a hit and miss and hit and run strategy, choosing to invest in this technology but not in that. Faced with this, and faced as we are with a world with damaged capital markets that will not repair soon, we will not as an industry be able to rely on the equity and debt markets to pony up the amount of funding and as cheaply or freely as in the past. Absent this source of funding, we'll have to pay for each new investment cycle by ploughing back returned earnings. And that will be a challenge if prices in the market are set incorrectly and are below cost. As in any mature industry, we should expect that there will be a shift away from the earlier preoccupation of gaining market share towards a new focus on shareholder returns on investment. The new capital market realities will simply demand it. Now, policy and regulation in Hong Kong has always been based, as you've heard the Minister say, on the central tenet of private sector-led investment with the government playing a supporting and facilitating role and stepping in only when there is market failure. Hence, in Hong Kong, the government has had the double fortune of, firstly, seeing the private sector innovating and investing its own money in this industry, and secondly, not having to dip into the public purse to initiate various sorts of government-funded projects. For instance, you can look that there is no government-funded national broadband project in Hong Kong. Simply put, the market is working efficiently to meet the market needs and isn't crying out for government intervention. I guess the expression that comes to mind is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If the policy and regulatory formula is a winning one, then there is no need to change it. The best prescription would seem to be obvious. Simply let the liberalisation process that was started 15 years ago work its way to a natural conclusion and allow the market to find its own natural equilibrium point. Finally, I'll make just a few quick comments on my own company. Earlier in the year, we announced that we were reorganising the company to better reflect the operational realities of being a provider of integrated services. Now, I don't need to bore you with all the details, but simply put, a company that's been around for the best part of 100 years needs house cleaning from time to time. You know, we have certain structures that were created either because of a regulatory requirement or because of a particular technology, etc. They seemed all good ideas at the time, but they've outlived their usefulness. So now we're moving to organise one single corporate structure, which, with the objective of being more efficient, more responsive to our customers, and to facilitate more innovation and more investment in our community, and also to allow our company to expand abroad. What will emerge from this is a new entity called HKT Group Holdings Limited, which will hold our telecoms, media and IT businesses all together. Our objective will be to build on the solid foundation that we have in place and to cement our position as Hong Kong's premier operator in this industry, no matter how uncertain or how problematic the road ahead. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our journey into the uncertain world ahead, I invite you to watch our progress here in Hong Kong as we address our customers' needs and those needs of the market. And maybe, just maybe, you will see a glimpse of the future in much of what we do. Thank you kindly for your attention.